Hi guys and welcome back. So in today's video I wanted to talk to you a bit about my progress in the first few weeks of being an allotment holder. In terms of what I've been up to this week with the allotment, I haven't really done anything this past week, but the week before, the first part of that week, I managed to do quite a bit. So then I went into sort of shopping from my bed mode and managed to pick up a number of bargains from Gumtree and Freecycle and Facebook Marketplace. And James and I then went out on Saturday last week for a couple of hours to drive around and pick up all of these bits and take them down to the allotment and drop them off there, which was great. So the first thing that I did when I got the allotment was to take down a bunch of things that I got for Christmas from my family and friends. Tools that I didn't have while gardening at home because I was gardening in grow bags and pots and containers. I got a proper shovel and a proper fork for use down at the allotment. As well, I got a Mexican kitchen garden kit for growing things for cooking Mexican food with, and some gardening gloves, and I took down some gifts that I'd had previously, like my kneeler that my friend Beth and Simon gave me for my birthday the year before last, which is a Cath Kidston kneeler, and my Cath Kidston apron that was also a birthday present, which is my gardening apron that I put things in my pockets of while I'm gardening, and things like that. So I took those all down to the allotment, and I went down with a little folding stool which I carry in the back of my car when I need to sit down when we're out and about, something that I can sling over my shoulder and take with us if I think I'm going to need a seat somewhere. But it's not ideal because it's very close to the ground. It's a sort of a fishing, camping, three-legged stool affair that we happen to have, but it's very low set, and so with mobility issues, getting in and out of it is a bit of a faff, but it's what I had at the time. So I took that down with me and took Charlie, and we went down, and I also took my compost bin. I have two compost bins at home, black plastic compost bins that I got second hand last year from Facebook Marketplace. One smaller one that is already full, that's in my garden, that is what I put my kitchen waste and my grass cuttings and toilet roll, cardboard inner tubes and things like that shredded up in there, and that just sits and rots away and is quite happy down the bottom of the garden. And I've got a big one that I hadn't used yet, I hadn't filled it at all because I was still filling the smaller one, which I have taken down to the allotment to fill with all my garden waste from down there. I also took down two big tubs full of leeks that I had been growing in the front garden. I decided that as they were so tightly knit together, you couldn't even, prise them apart. They were so tightly knit, so they really needed to be turned out of the tub entirely in order to just separate the roots out and try and separate the plants to repot them into something larger. And I hadn't got around to doing it here, and I thought, they're not growing, they were tiny, the size of sort of baby leeks, but we'd eaten a bunch of them as baby leeks, but I really wanted to just give them a chance to grow. So I thought, even if they do shock and I lose them, better to give them a chance to grow. And so I spent some time doing a test run with the soil. I wanted to know whether or not I could work the soil this year with my mobility issues, planting directly into the soil before I get my raised beds set up. And since they've literally made these allotments from scratch, all this topsoil has been added, so they dug down 2 or 3 feet and filled it with topsoil, so it's quite loose, it's not very compacted or claggy or anything like that, so it was nice and easy to work with, and actually I was fine. So I dug out my trenches, and I painstakingly sat and pulled apart these solid mats of leeks and got all the roots disconnected from each other and replanted them in the ground. I don't know whether or not they will survive, but they've got a better chance in the ground than they did in those pots, so we'll see what happens. I then went back few days later I went to the hardware shop, the local hardware builder's merchant, and I purchased a number of ironware hardware pieces that I needed. So I already had a D-ring for tying the dog up, which was something that I needed to have in the shed down at the allotment. The dog is going to be tied up when we are down there. So I took down his bed and I took down this D-ring and attached that to the wall and made him his own little space. And I've got a bungee cord elasticated lead that can clip onto the wall and clip onto his harness. So he's not a collar, so there's no chance of him choking or anything, but he can move around inside and outside of the shed, so he can come out and see where I am if he gets worried, but he can also sit in the relative warmth and shelter of the shed in his nice little bed. I also needed something to fasten back the door of the shed. We got given the sheds, and the sheds belong to the site, to the individual plots. They're on concrete bases, and they've got sturdy hardware for the padlock and the locking mechanism and things, but they didn't have any method of keeping the door open when you're down there, and twofold for needing it really. One is that the noise of the door flapping was terrifying the dog because it reverberates in the shed, and the other reason is, of course, if I'm sat in there I need light to work by. There's no windows in this shed, so the door has to remain open, it can't be blowing shut. So I got a hook for that. I also got a hook for the main gate of the site because when the housing associations and builders that built the sites handed them over to the allotment committee, they hadn't thought of that. So as I was down the hardware shop anyway, I bought a large, heavier duty one and attached it to hold the gate open when there's someone on site. We had been just like sticking a random little stick into the mud to sort of hold the gate closed, but in any kind of wind that wouldn't have held up, so this is slightly better. Then I went online because I was then poorly, and I found a bureau which combines obviously storage and a desk, but it's also, bureaus are very small, they're compact little units, so the actual inside of the shed was very small. It's about 1 metre across by about 1.70 metre length, so it's not massive, and I've got to also store all my tools and things in there, so actually being able to have a seat, somewhere for the dog, somewhere for my tools, and a big work surface. I couldn't think of really anything that we already owned or things that I could easily buy first hand anyway that would do the job, and I really wanted to get something second hand, but I wanted it to be not a coffee table or sort of a side table or something small, but to be actually at a workstation level, so the right height for me to actually work at, and also wanted to combine storage in because I'm going to have things like my kettle, my little gas stove, my teas, my plant seed box, my notepad and pen, all sorts of little bits of paraphernalia, my dishcloth for wiping up my mug, all of that sort of thing, and that needs to go somewhere, so having the storage built into the bureau was perfect. So I managed to find that. A man on Facebook Marketplace was getting rid of the bureau and separately a chair, and I inquired with him for both items, not realising it was the same person. He was clearing his mother's estate after her death, so it's nice. It's a really nice set of solid wood furniture, and it's nice and dry in the nice new shed. There's no leaks or anything, so I'm not concerned about damaging it in that respect. And I will put something down to protect the inside of the bureau flap, to protect the actual work surface when I'm working on it. And I will have a potting tray with sides on and a base and everything to hold the soil in, so I'm not putting liquid and mud and things directly onto the wood. But it really just served the purpose, absolutely. And I could fit it in my Fiat 500, which is always a bonus. So we got that, and I got a little shelf unit. And then I also managed to find on Gumtree a Guardman 2 metre by 3 metre polytunnel for £15. So basically he'd had it up, it had blown over the garden wall and landed in a heap in a windstorm because he hadn't secured it properly, and he'd never got around to putting it back up, and he was just basically fed up of looking at it in a pile at the bottom of his garden. So we went and had a look at it. All the parts were there. There don't seem to be any tears or anything in the cover, so I was quite happy to give it a punt. So we're going to try and assemble that, and the plan is to make some PVC pipe braces, doing a 45-degree angle slice on the pipe to make a sort of spiked end, and drive those about 2 foot maybe more into the ground with the mallet, and drill a hole through that and put a cable tie through the PVC pipe and around the base of the frame for the polytunnel, to anchor it into place and see if that works. I may end up with the same situation that this man had, but hopefully not. But I don't particularly want to concrete anything in on this plot. I mean, the way it's been designed and everything, they're little half plots and they've all got perfect topsoil, and it's almost like a garden, not an allotment site. It's a bit different to most allotment sites, so I don't really want to go around permanently concreting things into the ground. And also because the topsoil hasn't really settled yet, I'm not sure how that would affect concrete foundations over time, if they would sink down into the ground. So that's the plan. So that's basically where I'm up to. I'm not going to plant anything out for spring until after we get back from Spain, just because for the few days that we're away, and I won't be watering little seedlings, I mean, they really need to be looked in on regularly. So I am going to hold off on doing anything like that until after we're back. Then I'm going to put up the polytunnel, and I'm going to get things growing on the windowsills and transfer them into the polytunnel and my little upright non-walk-in greenhouse thing that my in-laws got me last summer, and have a sort of system. So I was watching Steve's Seaside Allotment channel here on YouTube, and he was talking about his polytunnel and how he has it like a conveyor belt, so things go from the heated propagator to the windowsills, then from the windowsills they go to the greenhouse and the polytunnel, and then from there they might go out under fleece or whatever, and then they might go into cold frames, or they might go directly into the raised beds, and it's sort of, it all goes along in a production line almost, of different steps. So the things that are going to go out into the beds in the actual ground have been being developed, being grown on in various other stages, so that they're ready for planting when that time comes, and rather than sowing directly into the soil of the raised beds, which means that you get more cycles out of your available outdoor space on the plot, which I like the sound of. So that's kind of my plan, and I'll take you along with that as it happens. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please do remember to give it a big thumbs up. It really does help. And remember to hit the subscribe button if you'd like to be notified every time I post a new video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.